Hello, I'm Sam Buchanan from the IMAA, and you're listening to the IMAA's podcast series, Out of Home 101, proudly coming to you from Acast Studios. Out of Home 101 is one of the 8 modules in the IMAA's Academy series. In this podcast, Out of Home 101, you'll hear from 4 media experts who are going to share their experience and knowledge in out of home. Kylie Green, Managing Director of OMA. Josh Fitzgerald, National Sales Director of Revolution 360. Jacqueline Eli, Client Partner at Parent Media. And Andrew Goff, Business Director at Hot Glue. Ahead, we're going to discuss planning, strategies for out of home, measurement, considerations, and all the tips you will need to know in building a successful out of home campaign. So listen up and enjoy this episode. Firstly, welcome to our panellists, Kylie, Josh, Jack, Goffy. And let's start off by introducing yourselves and tell us a little about your name and where you came from. I'll start with you, Kylie.
Sure, Kylie, that is me. So I've been in the industry for just about to crack 11 years now, and I've been in outdoor that whole time. And in fact, I have been at the Outdoor Media Association that whole time. So it's been a pretty exciting space. Obviously, why I've hung around there for quite a while, and there's been a lot of change and continues to be quite a lot of change too. So all very exciting, which I'm sure we'll delve into today.
We will. Josh.
My name's Josh. I'm the National Sales Director at Revolution 360, who sort of specialise in the urban and experiential outdoor space. I started back in 2008 in media at Channel 9. Moved into radio at SEN, a local Melbourne radio station from there. And then over to APN Outdoor, which is now JC&Co, where I was a group sales manager for about 6 years. So I've had a bit of a mix of industry experience, always media sales side, but a touch of TV, radio and out of home across that period.
Amazing. And Jack Eli.
Yeah, I'm Jack. I am the client partner at Apparent for media. My role there is essentially running the media team, working with our senior clients and with all the different publishers on developing new strategies and things for our clients. I have been working in media the 18-ish plus years. I actually started as a digital specialist and over the years run through lots of different roles, working with varying clients from FMCG to tech and finance.
Amazing. And Goffy.
Yes, I'm Goffy, or Andrew Goff to those people that don't know me as Goffy. I've been in media for 31 years. I started in the early 90s, spent time on the media agency side of the fence, and then jumped into outdoor sales at Outdoor Network Australia, which obviously became oMedia. And then around about mid-2003, jumped back into media agencies and have been back in media agencies across Starcom and OMD. And I'm now residing at Hot Glue as a business director.
Amazing. Kicking off today's conversation, outdoor has certainly evolved in the last, 10, 12 years. Kylie, can you explain to our listeners exactly what consists of outdoor? What does it include?
So outdoor, it's grown quite a bit over the time. It sort of kicked off as more of that classic outdoor poster. And through the advancements of technology, we've grown quite a bit. And of course, there's digital that's taking up quite a significant chunk of that now as well. So in terms of, what is it? It's roadside, so panels that you're seeing on the side of the road, the billboards, street furniture, small kiosks, that kind of thing. You've got the public transport area, so that's any of your vehicles, so panels on the outsides. Inside of those as well, your stations as well, so you've got your light rail, trains, trams. And then you've got your retail environment, your airports, and then some more of your lifestyle category, which captures all your cafes, office buildings. The list goes on and on and on. There's sort of a new place for outdoor almost every day.
How has it evolved in your eyes over the last period of time?
Sure. Look, I think technology has had a massive play in that. There's sort of the growth in and around things like QR codes, digital, again, that's a massive factor in it. If we track back 10, 12 years, we were at about a $500 million industry. We've now doubled that. In fact, we just cracked the $1 billion mark as the 22 results were reported to market. So look, again, the technology aspects have contributed to that quite a lot. It enables brands to better engage with consumers through that interactive, geolocated and time-sensitive messaging. We're really sort of putting that digital world into the physical world. And I think that's, it's a traditional media, but it's growing with the times. And we're, particularly as we start to move into this digital space more heavily and tap on the door of programmatic, we're certainly up there in terms of comparative to digital and the likes.
Oh, amazing. A question for everyone, and I'll probably start off with Goffy, but from your perspective, when should a client consider using outdoor, and what type of brands and businesses does it work best for?
Certainly, I think, outdoor for me, I'm a very, very pro outdoor person. I think I love the medium. I worked in the medium. It works. It's absolute socks off as a very broad brand awareness driver, whether it's complementing, TV campaigns, brand relaunches, anything along those lines. It certainly does the heavy lifting and even more so now, as was just referred to, the rise and advent and development of the digitisation around large format outdoors certainly provides that further growth and further input in relation to how the media can be used and the strength of what it can actually deliver from a mass scale perspective.
Amazing. Jack, what about you? When do you consider using outdoor and where does it fit for brands? And also, where does it fit in the funnel? Is it more awareness or is it consideration or?
Yeah, I think it can play different roles depending on how you use it. So it's definitely, as Goffy said, it's an amazing brand driver when you've got a big awareness campaign. There's obviously lots of different versions of out of home that can really deliver on that, and doing a combination of those different formats, we always see incredible results. But it's also really can play a different role when you've got the targeting there. So by adding that digital layer, the data that's available now that we didn't have when we used to plan out of home, and how we're able to really focus in on the areas where we're targeting and the way that we're messaging in those different places, it can play further down the funnel than we expect, I think. It's also, we've got case studies with clients where we've run an awareness campaign, but we've been really targeted with where it's going to the point where we can actually see client data and results in those exact postcodes where we've had more panels.
Yeah, amazing. Can I get you to dive a little bit deeper into some of the digital overlays that you can put in there around targeting?
Yeah, definitely. I think the digital advances and tech advances that have come with proliferation of the digital format have been awesome. So we, from a targeting point of view, definitely take advantage of geographic targeting so that we can really ring fence areas, whether that's within proximity to a store or within geographies we know that our audience is more likely to be living. Especially during COVID, we were really honing into those home suburbs. But even things like time of day targeting, weather targeting and triggers for changing your message if it's a sunny day versus a rainy day when you're working in the FMCG space definitely makes a big difference.
Amazing. Kylie, from your perspective, when should agencies consider using outdoor?
Every campaign they should be considering using outdoor. We've done a lot of research in around this as well, and it's not just tooting our own horn, but out of home has a role to play in on of itself, but also it strengthens other media channels. So there's a lot of stats around that too. I think throwing it in there with an online campaign, we've got the proof around that, showing the compliments of being outdoors and sort of being more receptive to that message and driving that sort of that buy, I guess, in the end. But also sort of throwing out of home TV and digital all together, we've got stats that tell us it's a 31% uplift on ROI by doing that. So I think, the takeaway is it's a consideration in every campaign, and also to sort of consider out of home as its separate piece, and it's, how can you really push your campaign effectively on the various formats and opportunities available, and from a geographical perspective as well.
Sam, if I can just add into there from further to what Jack said, we've also got a number of clients in the FMCG space who are, they're really, really honed in on the shopper data that you can obviously overlay on top of site selection, that helps with geographic selection, et cetera, that can give them further smarts in relation to how they're spending their money, and also how they can, because it's a twofold exercise where the supermarkets are obviously wanting to see that they are investing and supporting their brands or supporting their products, to drive people in store. It's all about driving new customers in store. So, utilising whether it's Quantium data, whether it's credit card data, that kind of level is also starting, it's fairly prevalent, and it's becoming more prevalent, especially with those clients that have got, minimal budgets or lower budgets, not a big brand kind of player. They are certainly looking at that kind of data and wanting to have those kind of smarts applied to any kind of planning.
And just seeing, like, when you're at that point of sale where the last ad you see before you go into a supermarket, a bag of chips, whatever, and then you go in there, I think I'm going to get this bag of chips, always reinforces that. And Kylie, just on that as well, you mentioned about complementing mediums. What, if there was one medium that would work best with outdoor, what would it be?
Okay, it would be up there between online and TV. So, yeah, look, online, and as I sort of said before, it's in and around that sort of 30% uplift on ROI for online, and that grows again with the combination of all three.
Amazing. Josh, what about you? From your perspective, when should a client consider using outdoor, and what type of businesses or brands work best?
I think the audience is really key to think about. Outdoor's the only advertising format that you can't really turn off or skip or fast forward. So we're seeing a lot of brands utilise out-of-home when they're wanting to target that younger audience, the 18 to 34-year-old audience in particular. They're a bloody hard to reach demographic. They're so media savvy. They've got ad blockers on. A lot of the time they don't have their antenna plugged in on their TV at home. They don't listen to commercial radio, magazines. What are they? So a lot of brands are utilising out-of-home to reach that audience, and out-of-home also plays a perfect sort of part in connecting the big screen being an outdoor panel to the small screen in terms of a mobile device, so you get that interactivity. And that's why we're seeing a lot of brands, particularly on our formats, utilise us that traditionally haven't played in the more urban street poster space when they're wanting to target a younger demographic. The banks are a perfect example of that. A lot of them are needing to connect to that younger audience through their apps and get them as a lifetime consumer. So they're utilising out-of-home a lot in that space.
Yeah, amazing. Goffy, I'll start with you on this one. What are your key considerations when you're planning and executing an outdoor campaign?
Well, firstly, coverage, presence, format, data capabilities and overlays certainly all come into it. There's a little bit, unfortunately, for me, there's a little bit of gut feel. I mean, I tend to think that, because I've been around a while, I tend to think I know what's a good outdoor site and what isn't. We all kind of, but, the great thing about out of home, I guess, is that it's personable, in terms of that aspect. What I think might be a really great site, Jack might not think is a great site, or vice versa. So certainly there's that level that you can obviously overlay in that, but they're kind of the things that you want to look at. I think you want to look at to start with, but obviously it needs to then hone back into what are the client's objectives, what is the brief. Sometimes budget dictates what formats we've got to play with. Are we going to play in a programmatic space? Are we going to buy it as a standalone site? Is it retail only? What may or may not be is going to be influenced by those factors as well.
Great. Jack, what about you? What are your key considerations when you're planning and executing an outdoor campaign?
Yeah, look, I think everything Goffy said makes sense and, plays into it for us as well. And from my perspective, I think it's really understanding the role that out-of-home is playing, and that dictates how you make those decisions. It kind of lets you identify what's most important, if it's about impact, frequency, reach, which then helps you work out what those outdoor tactics are and which channels you're going to be playing in, and whether you do or don't want programmatic, whether you do or don't want digital and static. Looking at what your creative opportunities are. Are you working with lead times and you can do something crazy and amazing in that digital creative space, or are we really tight turnaround, or is it a strict dictation of what assets are going to be available from the client that can make a big impact as well of how you use it?
Amazing. Kylie, what about you? When agencies are looking at this, what are the key considerations when planning?
Yeah, look, it ultimately comes down to the audience. Where is the audience? How are they travelling as well? It's not just a case of, throwing that geo area around a particular location. It's also where are they? They're not necessarily just in and around that space or in and around their own home. It's thinking about it from the perspective of where are they going on any other day? How can we capture those audiences during their travel? And we know, mass audiences are outdoor every day. There's 93% of Australians travelling every single day. So we have a huge amount of opportunity there. And it's about being tactful with, what those formats are, how we're reaching them. And also considering, some of these points have already been made, but, there is sort of that in outdoor, you can have that prestige, location, location, location. It could be a panel on the silos, that's making more of a statement, or, you're more on that sort of path to purchase for, particular products, and you can do that in the retail space or, the digital panels on those pathways for people. So, yeah, look, I think audience is key, and sort of working back from there in terms of what that campaign objective is.
Great. And Josh, what about you?
Yeah, I think the campaign objectives is the perfect place to start. Do they want to increase brand awareness? Do they want to push product? Because that will really dictate what your strategy is. And as the other guys just touched on, that will determine what role out of home plays. And if it is a brand awareness piece, then it's probably reach and impact that you're looking at. What formats then provide that? So you'd be looking at something like large format impact pieces, tram wraps, the like. So I think starting with the client's objectives and what you want the campaign to achieve is the perfect place to start, and you'll work it out from there.
When you are considering some of the new formats, obviously sometimes there's a production cost attached to it, but for the digital things,
Correct.
No. So your budget's dictated by some of the formats that you do, I imagine.
Absolutely.
Goffy, I'm going to start off with you with this. When a campaign is live, how do you monitor it and how do you measure the campaign's success?
Yeah, well, obviously, we are, being a bit of a smaller agency, we are very reliant on our media partners in relation to that. I'm a bit old-fashioned, especially if a campaign is running locally. I'll be out driving the streets, making sure that I'm, taking some site photos. I think that's probably a little bit of a bugbear. Well, Josh might not want to hear that, but a little bit of a bugbear of our side of the fence over the years, where site photos used to be a lot more prevalent than what they are now. I think that clients want to be able to see their, it's a bit of an ego thing. They also want to know what they're paying for. They want to see their creative up in lights. So, I'm always out and about wanting to have a look at stuff. We're certainly trying to make sure from a day-by-day basis or, a weekly basis that, we're connecting with people, whether it's in local market or, through our providers, to make sure that, from a deliverable perspective, that we're up and running in terms of, obviously measurement, move and the numbers that we work through with our partners is obviously the main measure there.
Amazing. Jackie, what about you?
It's funny you mentioned the pops and the site photos. I think it's the one thing that clients are constantly asking for, especially if we're advertising in markets that they're not in. But definitely working with Move, making sure we're looking at that audience data, obviously working with partners with their CEDU reporting as well comes into it. But I think the big thing for us is understanding what's happening in market, and not only that the bookings being delivered, but also staying in touch around that added value and obviously additional activity that, the great partners that we have in out of home are always delivering for our clients as well.
Amazing. Josh, what about for you? How do agencies monitor, measure the success of campaigns?
I definitely agree with the guys from an agency perspective that at the end of the day, out of home is a visual medium, so getting those glamour shots and as many pops as possible to provide the client proof that they're getting what they pay for is definitely critical. So we spend quite a fair bit of money and time and resource on actually getting really good photography, because then it absolutely fills the client with confidence you're delivering. But beyond that as well, data plays a big part as well. And as part of our data measurement platform, 360 Intelligence, we actually provide clients a post-campaign report based on audience movement, which is derived from mobile data science technology. So we can actually provide them specific audience measurement data in post-campaign analysis that's based on their campaign timings specifically, because at the end of the day, you also need to ensure that the client is confident that they're reaching the amount of people that you planned on reaching in the planning process.
Kylie, campaign's live. How is it monitored? How is it measured in your eyes?
Yeah, look, of course we have Move. It's been around now since 2010 in its original format. It's been used as the industry currency for that whole time. It was a massive game changer for the industry at that point, and we've continued to improve that to be reflective of what's happening in market. We're now working with what is Move 1.5, so that's encompassing that digital score while we're in the throes of building our next iteration of Move, being Move 2.0. That's where I think it's really going to make a difference in terms of how people can be trading in out of home. And I say that because the data that will be available will be at a far granular level. We'll have hourly audiences or hourly data for 365 days of the year. So we can start to capture that seasonal variation as well. We'll also have the opportunity to measure all formats Australia-wide, which is one of the limitations that we've currently got. We're sort of working in those metro areas and not every format has a methodology behind it at this point. So it'll really provide the media owners and agencies the data and the proof that they need to validate those campaigns.
Amazing. Jack mentioned before, touched on verification. Talk to us about verification. Explain what it is and how it works.
Yeah, look, I mean, there are third-party verifiers. That there are a number of them out there that the agencies and media owners are working with together. And really, it is what's in the name. It's a case of saying, did I get what I paid for? We don't really have a stance on the who's who, but we've certainly done a lot of work with the industry in terms of raising the standard around what that looks like, what are the metrics that people should be working to ensure that, it's a fair review and justification of what's being delivered in any campaign period. And I think we're in a really good place with that now.
Amazing. We're going to go around the table. I want to hear what everyone thinks is going to happen in the future, like 5 years, 10 years down the track. What does the future of outdoor look like? Josh, we'll start with you.
No worries. Well, yeah, the future's very bright for out of home. As I sort of touched on before, audiences are fragmenting across every other media channel. They're harder to reach. Out of home audiences are really on the up and up because people are going to continue going outside, of course. So the future's bright. In terms of what it looks like, I think we'll definitely see a lot more of that bridging the gap between the big screen and the small screen and getting people to interact with it. And the more that clients can utilise technology to transform out of home from a one-to-many communication format to a one-to-one will definitely change the industry in a big way. So getting messages out there received from individuals on a bespoke basis will be a game changer. And then being able to get them to interact with out of home and close that purchase loop through out-of-home advertising will be massive and driven by technology in a big way.
Kylie, what about you and your views on the future?
Yeah, look, it's growth. The sense is it's not just us who are flying the out-of-home flag. There is a lot of that sort of humming industry at the moment that out-of-home is really on that next verge of a massive launch, a growth period. I think a lot of that will be driven by digital, and we're obviously putting, again, those metrics in place to help provide the proof around that. And then programmatic will also be an area that we start to see a lot more growth, and that will also see new buyers coming to the channel. There's buyers in digital that are now starting to dabble in that out-of-home space, and we have a role to play in terms of educating the industry and those new buyers so that they're effectively buying out of home and seeing the results that they're looking for.
We're going to talk about programmatic in 1 second, but I do want to ask you a secondary question. How fast, it has been almost the second coming of outdoor, the digital revolution has really risen it to the next level. How fast are traditional panels changing over, and is it just continuing to happen, and do you see a time when everything will be digital?
No, I think there's certainly a value in classic. They play different roles. There's certainly transitions happening, and look, in terms of a timeline, I can't give you that. It comes down to many factors. There's lots of hurdles that people need to jump through in order to get those digital panels approved. But, we're sitting there at the moment, I think it's 63% of revenue is attributed to digital from overall out-of-home revenue. I imagine that will grow, but I don't think it's necessarily a case of out with the old, in with the new, because there is absolutely a role for classic, and as there is for digital, it's about understanding what each of those are and how to use them effectively together.
Amazing. Jack, what about you? What do you see in the future for outdoor?
Look, I think immediate future, definitely the digital continuing to grow. And, even I think for me, the big picture is the creativity. So looking at the new formats of 3D panels that are available and the amazing things that can be done with creative in those sites. But I think, and maybe this is personal wishing rather than actually seeing the future, but I actually think the one thing out of home has that the other media channels are losing more and more is the opportunity for real life experience. So having those static and panels that we can build on and create environments where it's an engaging environment for people, whether that's on the streets, in retail centres, or what that looks like, that's a unique element that I think in 5 years' time is going to be even more of a differentiator for out of home.
Amazing. Goffy, what about you? What do you see the future of out of home?
I agree with everything that's been said, certainly. Definitely, data is going to only continue to grow, but it's, data is only as good as how you utilise that and how you apply it. And so the learning that goes around that's going to be super important from a growth perspective. Growth is massive. I think regional is going to be huge, as there's a need to have more regional coverage. So where that can happen, programmatic, I think, as we get a deeper understanding of how we can utilise it and how the suppliers or how our partners are open and prepared to put plant across the programmatic platform, what they'll release and what they won't release, and how we can then utilise that in the best possible way. And I very much agree with Jack in and around the creative aspect, although I could be controversial and say that the creative area needs a lot more education in and around how to utilise digital out of home to the best of its ability, and whether that's a case of creatives wanting to actually create something that is bespoke for the channel, or whether the client is prepared to let them go down the path and do something and utilise the channel to the best of its ability, I think is something that is going to grow in the next few years. I think the way that it's utilised at the moment, some do it well and some don't do it very well at all.
And that's an interesting point, and I'll dive a little bit into that. Goffy, what makes a good out-of-home campaign in your eyes?
Well, I think I can go back to a story where a long, long time ago, where in selling outdoor, I had, you people in Sydney will be familiar with the White Bay Hotel. I had a car manufacturer who bought that location for a period of 9 months, and creative decided that they would put a internal backlit airport shot on a front lit outdoor panel that when the afternoon sun hit it, you couldn't see it. The ability to actually go around and look at sites and work out what is best for each particular location is super important. The role of digitisation, the ability to be able to then, be more creative around, as Jack said before, time targeting, weather targeting, how you can become a bit smarter with what you do from a message perspective that isn't just taking the last still off a TVC and whacking it up in the sky, or whacking it up in a panel that somebody sees before they walk into a supermarket. Utilise the channel for what it's worth and get the most out of it. And I think, the people or the creatives that actually do that, and the clients that have got the preparedness to actually go outside of the box, are the ones that will get the best possible benefit out of the format. And Josh would tell you that even like the street furniture or the stuff that Revolution 360 do, that yes, it's flat printed, but it's a lot more creative because of the locations that people are utilising in.
Amazing. Jack, what about you? What makes a great campaign?
For me, I think it's something that stands out. So yes, contextually right for the environment that you're looking for, but something that is noticeable, something that's going to grab people's attention, avoiding that cardinal sin of telling a whole story in 1,000 words on one panel is always a good start. But I think something really eye-catching and to the point and single-minded makes a big difference.
Amazing. Kylie, what about you? What makes a great campaign?
Yeah, look, very similar in that it's that contextual relevance, but that short and sharp messaging. It's how can you deliver that message? I mean, the general rule is no more than 7 words on that panel. I mean, every time that question gets asked, the visual comes to mind, and it's always some of those koala ads that come out. I think they do an awesome job. It gets that message across straight away. There's so many messages conveyed in just that quick glance, and you've got to remember, where are those audiences? What's the environment that they're in? How long do they have to look at that? It's the difference between someone zooming past in a car. You need to capture them quite quickly versus, how are you going to put that campaign up for, say, hanging out in a train station waiting for a train. There are different opportunities that exist there, and that's where you can get the best from the creative.
Great. Josh, what about you? What makes a great campaign?
I definitely agree with everything that everyone's said so far, but to add to that as well, we're seeing some of the best campaigns get shared on social media these days. It's funny, outdoor advertising is actually one of the very few advertising formats that people actually claim that they enjoy because it doesn't interrupt their experience, which is a big plus. But people also share really clever campaigns. You would see it all the time on LinkedIn, but even on other sites like Pinterest and whatnot, people enjoy sharing outdoor advertising, which is quite interesting. So I think a campaign that can really stand out from a creative sense makes a very, very successful campaign.
Couldn't agree more. I think that, the more creative, it lends itself to being really, really creative. And the more creative, I think I saw the Dracula ad so many times on LinkedIn, and always kind of, people talk about it. And they probably did one site and it's gone around the world 1,000 times.
Correct.
Carly, tell us what is programmatic out of home and what's happening.
Sure. I mean, look, it's the digital space. It's being able to buy that quickly. It's very much like digital, where you can be jumping online, grabbing that inventory grabbing those spaces quite quickly. One of the things to consider here is, as much as programmatic falls within that digital sphere, the way you would buy digital is still very much in that traditional way that you would be buying classic, obviously with different parameters around that. Whereas programmatic allows that more immediacy in terms of the buy. And, given the space that we're in, it is amongst the community, so there are considerations that have to be made. It's not like online where it's bang, push it out there without any sort of rating, I guess, on that ad. In out of home, we still have that same lens that needs to be applied in terms of is that messaging appropriate? It has to go through the right approval process before it can be pushed live. From an industry perspective, what we're doing here is we have built an impression multiplier that will be available very, very soon off the Move 1.5 digital numbers that we've got, and that will sort of, I guess, level out that data across all the people playing in the programmatic space, whereas currently we don't have that consistency. We'll be able to deliver that now, and then again, once Move 2.0 is available, we will be able to provide that again in a more accurate and granular level.
Amazing. I'm going to go through another question now, and then we'll come back and ask other few questions. But wrapping up today's conversations, I'd like to ask each of you a career tip or advice you want to share to the listeners. Josh, I'll start with you.
Sure. Media is an interesting industry, and it's one that you really have to embrace, I think, to get the most out of it. Networking and relationships is definitely key. As much as technology is changing the pace of things and what's possible, at the end of the day, it's a relationship-driven business. Personally, I've got lifetime long friends that I've met through media, either clients or colleagues, and the more that you kind of get to know people, deal with people, look after people, don't burn bridges, network, that will put you in really good stead to not only perform well, but also when it comes time to either get that promotion or a new job or whatever, that certainly helps as well. So I think putting people first in the industry is definitely a big tip for me.
Couldn't agree more. Carly, what about you? Tips for your
Yeah,
career?
look, I completely align with that in terms of the relationships, really spending the time to build those relationships. And I mean, a lot of these conversations that are being had around your future, you're not there. It's other people that are putting your name forward. So, consider that. I think having a mentor, you don't have to be at a certain stage of your career to have a mentor. A mentor is a very valuable thing to have at any point in your career. Don't be afraid to jump out there and ask someone. Majority of people will be really pleased to have that opportunity to mentor somebody. And I think really, if you're not feeling uncomfortable, then you're not being challenged and it's time to do something.
Jack, tips?
My top tip would be take the time to understand the why. So we work in a very diverse and complex industry that has lots of different angles and sides to every story. So if you can see a situation, a problem or a solution from different perspectives, understand why it's happening, why it's being asked, why someone's answering the way they are, then you grow a more rounded understanding. And I think it makes you a better collaborator and will help you skyrocket your career.
Asking questions is so key. Goffy, in your distinguished career, what are the tips?
Yeah, how have I survived for so long? By stealing everyone else's comments that they've just said and say, oh, I agree with all of them wholeheartedly. No, networking is super important. I think that, asking questions, we don't always have the answer, and it's okay to not always have the answer. And there isn't always the right answer. There's many different ways that you can skin cats in relation to the way you plan and buy and transact with media, and especially in the outdoor world. Do what you say and say what you do. Clients, if you say that you're going to have something to a client by the end of the day, do it. And if you can't, communicate with them and let them know your word is only as good as the value of that is. And that's what clients love. They love that if you're honest and dependable, that goes a long way. And that goes a long way with your internal relationships and your internal management. Listen and hear, don't just... listen to what's going on around you. Learning by osmosis from senior people within your office is super important. Listen to conversations and get in amongst it. Knowledge is important, ask questions, as Jack said, but, I like to hope that I've always treated people the way that I've wanted to be treated, and therefore you leave the way you come in. So, if you've been kind and nice and respectful to people, you'll get that back in spades, and that helps. I think Josh, mentioned about networking and future opportunity, or you might have mentioned Sam about networking and future opportunities. It's other people that are putting you forward. Well, they're not going to put someone forward who, doesn't treat them in a very nice way. So, you're reliant on media to push your name. You treat them well. We don't always have to make everyone, get the lowest possible deal on the lowest possible rate. It's about a balance. So.
Yeah, great advice. I think, there's so much there. I think that, say what you do and do what you say. That just goes through your entire life. It goes through to my children as well.
They don't listen to us.
Jack, I've got a question for you. Are there any tips when you're sitting in front of a brief from a client, are there any tips that you think about when you're planning an out-of-home campaign?
I think really understanding the objective of that brief, making sure that you understand, therefore, the role that out of home is playing within the mix in there, and then being able to articulate that really clearly when you're talking to your publishing partners so that you can come up with the best solutions. So I think making sure you understand those nuances, making sure you're outlining what's most important, and giving the publisher partners opportunities to put forward things that they know about their product that you might not, so that you can get to the best opportunity for that campaign, for that business objective that it all started with.
Amazing. Kylie, from your perspective, what are the big issues for the OMA? Like, what keeps you awake at night?
It's actually my children that keep me awake at night. But, look, it's always government. I think some of the restrictions and we're always fighting that battle in terms of, what they're trying to do in terms of stopping development of out-of-home in many respects. So it's bans that are being put in place, or attempted bans to be put in place, around the type of advertising that can be put out there, particularly around your occasional foods or products like alcohol. We do a lot as an industry to be on the front foot with that and apply policies for our members so that, we can show government that we are that responsible industry and we're taking that seriously. So, that I think is one of the issues. That it depends on what's going on politically. There's often, new fires that come up that need to be put out, but I'd say that that's probably one of the biggest things that, you never know what that curveball will be.
Amazing. Thank you to all my guests today, and thank you guys for listening.